Okay.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
You're going to record it?
Oh yeah. Um,
Actually, wait 1 second. I have to get my phone. Oh,
okay.
you're already streaming live. I just
Yeah,
have to get
sorry.
my phone. Somebody is coming to the room. And
Oh.
I'm not sure they can find it.
Okay. It's okay. I will make you co-host, Tanya. Thank you.
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kupi Janavalava Girivaradhari Kupi Janavalava Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jishodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Shodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jishodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Panachari Jamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Jishodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jishodhanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Panachari Jamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Sisi Radha Madhava Ki Jai Gantara Shrimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Taigo Premanandi Hari Hari Bo Hare Krishna Govinda. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvise Sasanyavadi Paschati Rasatarini. Hare Krishna. I just have to call somebody. 1 second. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The devotee coming to the room, but he may have forgot the room number. Or maybe, yeah. Anyway, he's not answering, so, okay. So, on Friday, I came to El Paso, Texas, which is in the middle southern part of America, a little more on the west side. And we had the first annual Rath Yatra ever. Well, the first Rath Yatra, yeah. So, and all the devotees were overwhelmed, ecstatically overwhelmed by the association, by the people, by the organization. Everything was amazing. And a lot of them said, and they've been to Rath Yatras all over the world, and a lot of them said this was the best Rath Yatra. The nicest people. 2,500 books were distributed. I'm not sure how much prasadam, maybe 3,000 plates. And we did a parade, and then these thousands of people just followed the parade into the end of the festival where all the tents were set up. And we were meeting so many nice people. Like, they all seemed like they were devotees. They just forgot. And we had to remind them. And they were I was at the book table, and people were, it's like, what book should I read? I go, well, read this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. I go, okay. And they'd walk away with the stack. So it was really sweet. So if you're anywhere near El Paso next year, it's going to be the first weekend of October. You should definitely come. Anuradha could come. Maybe Matthew can take a vacation and come. The association is so special. Yeah, so there were a lot of Prabhupada disciples who came here. And then it was a bit like a retreat because we're all staying. There's a devotee here who owns several hotels. So we're all staying in the hotel together, and then we have a morning program together. And before the Rath Yatra and after the Rath Yatra. And then we had the Sunday program last night. And it was one of the most amazing Sunday programs. Everyone was appreciating so much. All the service that was done. So next year, put it on your calendar if you're anywhere close, or you want to come to America next year. This is a great time to come. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Madam. Hare Krishna.
So before we begin, we're going to continue reading. I didn't have tremendous amount of time to prepare, but I think we'll have enough. There's one interesting offering about one of Prabhupada's first female disciples, about how Prabhupada dealt with women, which I think is going to be really nice, enlightening. And I was just studying a few things lately I wanted to share before we begin. And this is such an important point. Prabhupada said that there's so many things you cannot do, you cannot achieve in Krishna consciousness. And all those things, Krishna will achieve them for you. So there's certain things that you have control of that you can do in your sadhana. There's certain stages of Krishna consciousness that on your own you can strive for. And then there's another level where on your own you can't get there. It has to be given to you by Krishna. So like Krishna says in the Gita, Ananyas chintayanto mam nijana pariyupasate. I make up what you lack. So that idea is the idea, I'll expand it. Prabhupada saying, do this, and Krishna will give you this. And all this, or all these things that we want, that we just cannot manifest ourselves. So we've talked about this conversation before, where Prabhupada said, you don't have to worry about determination, just chant 16 rounds, follow the principles, then Krishna will give you the determination to do that. You just do that part. Okay, I will chant 16, follow the 4, Krishna will give you the determination to continue doing it. If you go, and you might say, I'm determined, I'm going to, do this and that. There may be things that we can't actually do, but if we're just determined to do the more basic things, then the other higher things, Krishna just does that for you. And Christianity says that basically you do nothing and God does everything. So Prabhupada said 16 rounds, 4 principles, serve the Vaishnavas, hear Bhagavatam. So a little more than Christianity asks, but what you're doing, what you can achieve on your own is the 16 rounds, the principles, hearing, doing these things. But what you get from it is all the things you couldn't achieve if you tried, that Krishna will give. So that example, when a devotee asked Prabhupada, how do we get determination to chant 16 rounds? And Prabhupada said, chant 16 rounds and Krishna will give you the determination. We kind of flipped it around. Didn't make sense. No, I needed don't I need determination to do 16 rounds? And Prabhupada is saying, no, just do it. And then after you do it, the determination will come because you did it. So, sometimes we think about that and go, that doesn't really make sense, because how can I do the 16? The Prabhupada said, well, you committed to do it. So determined or not, you're already committed, so you just do it. 16 rounds, 4 principles. Okay, I'm going to do this. I have my service, feel like it or not, committed or not. No, it's just do it. And then the determination, the commitment, all that will come as Krishna will give that as a byproduct, which is quite interesting, isn't it? So I was discussing this with a devotee, and he said that his spiritual master, Rabindra Swarup, said that there are some anarthas that are impossible for us to overcome. Krishna has to overcome them. And there's some anarthas, and particularly the demons Krishna killed, they represent anarthas. The demons Balaram killed, they represent anarthas. And the ones that Krishna killed represent anarthas that we cannot overcome on our own. And the ones that Balaram killed represent anarthas that we can overcome on our own. So you do this, and Krishna will come and kill these other anarthas that you cannot kill, which is, it's an interesting, it makes, in a sense, it makes becoming Krishna conscious easier in your mind, because you only have to do this much and then the rest will be done. So I was thinking of an example that maybe will help us understand. So I hire Tanya. I say, I need you to do this work. And I give her some simple tasks. I just want to see if she comes on time and how efficient she is. And and you go, here's a desk, here's a computer. And I need you to do this Excel sheet, and then after that, I need you to edit this letter. Then I need you to send this letter to these 100 people. And here's the Excel sheet for them, and like that, like simple, not, you don't have to be so talented to do this stuff. And so every day she comes in, she does what I say, and then 2 weeks later I go, okay, I'm putting you in charge of 100 people. And here's, your budget is 100,000 this month, and I'm giving you these vehicles and this and that. So why? Because she did that little work. She did it steadily. She proved herself, said, okay, we're going to give you all these resources now to do a bigger job. So isn't that nice? Because all of us think, well, I wonder if I'm ever going to overcome this desire, that desire. And the answer is you're not. But Krishna will. So then, it removes a certain anxiety, right? Of worrying whether or not I'm going to be able to overcome these things. So, Srila Prabhupada tells us to do certain things, right? So we do them, and we do them to the best of our ability. And we try to be present with our japa. We try to firmly follow the principles and so forth. But the idea is it's never done alone. It's always, it's activating Krishna's help. So that's the idea. It's a beautiful thought. And you can think that when you're chanting, because sometimes when you're chanting, you want to experience more, but you're not. But at least know that by that process, as Krishna feels your need, sees your need, understands your need, and sees your qualification, then he helps. So that's why I always, at least for my spiritual life, I always rely heavily on prayer, because to me, prayer is the gap filler, that gap from where I am to where I want to be, where I need to be, where Prabhupada wants me to be. The gap filler is prayer. And prayer combined with effort attracts Krishna, because yayatamam prapadyante, Krishna's always going to reciprocate with what you want, right? So And then I've often said that if we understand these points, then the anxiety of will I be Krishna conscious, or how can I be Krishna conscious, or when will I be Krishna conscious? It's not there, because it's not like you have to do it. You have someone who's helping you do all the hard work. So I give Tanya these jobs to do, and she doesn't know how to do them. I said, no, but I'm giving you people that know how to do them. So you just oversee it. Like, so Krishna's like, I'm giving you the strength to do what you may not be able to do. I'm giving you realization, so it will help you overcome your obstacles. And realization, to me, realization is a really good sign, because it's showing that the devotee is sincerely wanting to advance, and then Krishna is giving realization. And, if I say, hey, Gabriella, what's your realization this week? And she says, my realization is I have no realization. That's not a good sign. But if she says, oh, I've had all these realizations, this, that, I have so many I can't even tell you, that's a good sign. That means she's showing Krishna she wants to progress, and so Krishna's enlightening her how to do it. So that gap area, between where we are and where we want to be, that's filled by Krishna. That's good to know, right? So all of you who are thinking, I'm not so advanced, when am I going to be advanced? It's so slow. You just keep doing the process, and Krishna will do that. And you do your best on this side, and then he makes up what you can't do. Otherwise, how would we become Krishna conscious? Not just on our own effort. It wouldn't work. Right? Okay, so we are going to begin reading. Unfortunately, I get caught up studying other things than the Tributes book, which I should be studying for this class. So I've been a bad boy. But I think there's enough substance here that we'll get through it. So this is an offering by one of the earlier devotees named Arundhati. And I picked out one paragraph, and I wanted to talk about it because I found it interesting. When I read it, you might not find it so interesting, but I want to unpack it a little bit and how I see it as interesting. So she says, I hope I can have more good devotee association for the rest of the time I am alive on this planet. Sincere, fixed-up devotees are such a gift. I remember how you wrote to me early on that I was fortunate to have the association of Jadharani and Satsuru. And I can see that was truly fortunate. Yesterday, I was thinking of your dear Giriraj Swami, how he also was there in Boston in the early days, and through good association became such a strong devotee and a servant of your mission. So why did this stand out for me? Well, number one, these devotees, when Prabhupada wrote that letter, these devotees were probably less than 2 years in the movement. And Prabhupada saying you're very fortunate to have their association, or 2 or 3 years. And because Prabhupada is seeing that if I have a disciple who is following my instructions and teaching what I'm teaching, then in a sense, the association of that disciple is it's like my association. It's like it's a representative, it's my limb. And so, each disciple of Prabhupada is like a little Prabhupada, according to how much they represent Prabhupada, how much they understand him, understand his desires. And so Prabhupada was feeling these devotees, they represent me because they understand my desires, they execute my desires, and therefore having their association is extremely valuable for you because it's almost like having my association. Now, it's true because, as you know or can imagine, Prabhupada could not be everywhere. And when people came to ISKCON, they didn't really, it wasn't like they met Prabhupada and he convinced them. It was they met his disciple. We even have disciples of Prabhupada who never even met Prabhupada. And so it's like we could say they met Prabhupada through Prabhupada's disciples. And it was as good as meeting Prabhupada. And Giriraj Swami said, the first devotee that explained the philosophy, it was so deep and articulate. And he knew, he could tell, he said, this is not coming from her. It can't come from her. It has to be coming from someone much greater because it's so clear. It's so astute. It's such, I never heard such clarity of philosophy before. So she's speaking exactly what she heard from Prabhupada. So in a sense, a Chinta Beta Beta Tattva, one indifferent, in a sense, what Giriraj Swami heard from this devotee, Janavi, was Prabhupada. It was like, okay, if Prabhupada were sitting next to him, Prabhupada would have said the same thing she said. Of course, you might say, but that's Prabhupada and so on and so forth. But if someone, his heart is open, then they can hear it from anybody. They can hear what Prabhupada said from anyone and it'll act in the same way. If someone maybe is more closed or has more negative samskars, so to speak, maybe they need Prabhupada's personal association to, like the atomic blast in their heart. But the devotees who were representing Prabhupada, they were the ones who were making all the devotees. It wasn't Prabhupada. Prabhupada wasn't out on the street, distributing magazines, meeting people, bringing them to the temple. He was inspiring us, and we were doing that. And so as much as we represented him, at least from my experience, I felt pretty much like people were meeting Prabhupada by meeting his disciples. It was really not that much different. So that's why Prabhupada is saying you're fortunate to have the association of these devotees because it's like they are following what I'm teaching. So they are my expansions and they are representing me. And so you are getting my association through them. And so that's true for all of us. If we represent Prabhupada, then it is almost like people are getting Prabhupada's association. What a blessing, right? If you can represent Prabhupada in such a way that people can feel his presence, or people can feel as if it wouldn't have been any better if I heard Prabhupada speak because you've represented him perfectly. Of course, we know realization is there and realization affects others. At the same time, what I saw was that those who had Prabhupada's spirit, it was transferred into the people they were speaking to. They could feel it. So I think this goes along with the other point I was making, that you might feel like, well, who am I? And how could I move people and change people? Okay, maybe you can't. But to the degree that you represent Prabhupada, he will do it through you. So, you can limit yourself. That's okay. It keeps you humble. But don't limit what Prabhupada can do through you. That would be a problem, right? Okay, I'm just an ordinary person. Okay, fine. But somehow or other, I've got Prabhupada's mercy. And if I represent that, then his Shakti can work through me, and then this ordinary person can have an extraordinary effect on other people. That we have to understand. And to deny that would be a false kind of humility. I mean, as long as you are following and representing Prabhupada, it's not your Shakti anyway. So, you can't minimize that Shakti saying, I don't have it. Yeah, okay, you don't have it, but that Shakti can work through you. You're the copper wire. Okay, the copper wire does not generate electricity, but the electricity can go through it. So you can't say, I'm a copper wire and no electricity can go through me. That would be stupid. You could say, I'm a copper wire and I don't have my own electricity, but you can't say it can't go through me. So to the degree that we represent Prabhupada to that degree, that potency can go. And so that the electrical charge just gets handed down. Everybody's touching hands, right? Can't see my hands. We're touching hands and the electrical charge is going through. And we didn't generate the electrical charge. So that is just a practical explanation of what I saw personally happening during Prabhupada's time. Like we never felt that, oh, I wish Prabhupada were here to preach because we can't do it. We never felt that way. We always felt that Prabhupada was with us through his Shakti, and it was working, and people were becoming devotees. Like we say, Krishna consciousness was spreading in spite of us. That's a common saying. We opened a temple, and so many people came in spite of us, in spite of the fact that we're conditioned souls. But we did what Prabhupada wanted, and so even though we were not qualified, people became Krishna conscious. So, and if you say, no, but I couldn't do that, it's not true, because it's not you doing it. Okay, we can say you couldn't do it, but it's not you doing it, so it doesn't matter. It's Krishna doing it if you're willing to have it done through you, if you're willing to represent it. And if you can follow what Prabhupada taught, you have potency and people will appreciate it. And Prabhupada many times said that preaching happens on two fronts. One is with your words and one is with your example. So when you have both, if you're following Krishna consciousness, that puts you pretty much in a different category than most people, because most people are not following the four regulative principles, what to speak of chanting 2 hours a day. And so when people learn that you're doing that, they're impressed by that and they respect it. At least the ones who are interested. And so they open up to hear from you because you're doing something they're not doing. And by doing that, Krishna gives you so many realizations to share with people. And Krishna, sometimes will put words in your mouth that just the right words that these people need. So the more we can represent that mood, the more Krishna will use us and put the right words, the words that this person needed to hear. And sometimes you'll see, wow, that was the perfect thing. I didn't even know that was the perfect thing, but Krishna knew it. And I was willing to represent him, so he gave me the perfect words. And so, yeah, like here in El Paso, and so many, people came yesterday just because a few devotees had a desire to put on a festival, and thousands of people came and learned about Krishna, right? So all it was is it's just a little desire. We need to share this. And then Krishna sent thousands of people, right? Who are we? We're just whoever we are. But when we add that little desire to whoever we are, it changes everything. Because that little desire overrides the material desire. And that little desire is, I want to help other people. I want people to get Krishna consciousness. They're suffering. I want to share that with them. And Krishna says, okay, if you're willing, I can work through you. If you're not willing, I can't. And so then you could say, yeah, I could never spread Krishna consciousness. That's true if you're not willing to do it. It's true if you're not able to follow well, you won't be successful at it, or your success will be minimal. But if you're willing, you can't say that, because that would be limiting Krishna. Oh, Krishna can't help me. Krishna can't guide me. No, what verse is that? There's no verse like that. As long as I'm in Krishna consciousness, the verse is Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, I'll give it. But for me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. That verse is for those who don't want. Well, either you want, you get knowledge, or you don't want, you forget. But as long as you want and you're following, the verse is, I give knowledge, I give intelligence. Right? Correct? Correcto. Hare Krishna. So I'm going to read an offering by a devotee named Koshalya who met Srila Prabhupada in Hawaii, I think in 1968. She was living on a beach, I believe. She was 17 or something. And she was doing her meditation and a flyer like just flew in, a little pamphlet, Many devotees became devotees like that by some Bhagavad Gita fell out of the sky, hit them in the head, woke them up. So just a flyer, flew in her lap, A.C. Bhaktivedanta is coming. And she met Prabhupada. And Prabhupada invited her to the room and spoke personally with her about so many things. And so she went to India with Prabhupada with the first group of devotees. And so she is going to relate in her Vyas Puja offering how Prabhupada dealt with her and her god sisters, which according to her is much different than how many people might think Prabhupada dealt with women. And the reason being because the Shastra says things about women that would make one think that Prabhupada would deal with women in a specific way. So this is going to be nice to read because it kind of contravenes what you might think how Prabhupada would act. And he was, and if you read the story about her, when she met Prabhupada, it was like so intimate. It was like they were friends. You know that story? You ever hear Koshalya when she met Prabhupada? It was as if she were her granddaughter. She were Prabhupada's granddaughter, and they already knew one another. And they were talking. Of course, they didn't know one another. They were just coming to meet one another. It was amazingly intimate. I can't remember the details. Maybe it'll come up in the offering. So, just give me a second. But what do they say? When they do a radio show, the disclaimer: the opinions herein are not mine; they are hers. The opinions herein are of the author; they are not mine. Okay, so if anybody wants to get on my case, I'm just reading her offering, and anything else I say, you can chastise me. No, we want to chastise you for reading the offering. Yeah, okay, anyway. I offer this tribute to my beloved Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada, on his 125th Vyas Puja. It is a great honor, and I'm humbled by the opportunity to share some of my memories, realizations, and experiences. On a personal note, I find it unfortunate that in many places in the world, and even at times in our own society, the contributions of women are minimized and their potential stifled. But my experience with Prabhupada was quite different. He would always encourage me to be my best and expected me to do whatever was needed without any limitations, even if it was something I had never done before. Through his example, he taught me many life lessons, which have been a wellspring of inspiration throughout my life. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to learn some of them right here, right now. Any devotee who spent time with Prabhupada knows what a powerful and fearless presence he emanated. But I would like to share stories that reflect how kind, affectionate, and funny he was. As I look back, I'm amazed how often he would teach us through kindness and his wry and witty sense of humor. When I met Srila Prabhupada, I was 17 and had been reading Bhagavad Gita since I was 14. So when you ask Koshalya, when someone asks Koshalya, someone who's not a devotee, why did you become a devotee? How did you become a devotee? The answer is, I was just taking up where I left off in my last life. Otherwise, Who becomes a devotee at 14? Who reads Bhagavad Gita at 14? So she's 14. So and she was 17 in 68. So that was, she was reading Bhagavad Gita before Prabhupada even came here. That's crazy. The book was my constant companion. I guess she hadn't finished reading it in the last life, or she read it a lot in the last life. So as my desire for self-realization grew, I felt that what I needed most was to live in nature and meditate. So I went off to Hawaii seeking the answers to life's greatest questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? What is the meaning of life? I set up a tent on the beach on the north shore of Oahu and was living on the fruits of the land when, through the most mystical event of my life, Prabhupada entered my world. It was March 1969. Oh, so she was 18 at that time when she met Prabhupada. This is a classic how I came to Krishna consciousness story. Actually, we should have a book of just one story after another because they all kind of sound like this. While meditating on the beach, a flyer carried on the warm ocean breeze came to rest on my leg. Sounds like a Hollywood movie, doesn't it? Can you see it now? Yeah. 18-year-old girl on the beach meditating, the breezes, and the flyer, and she picks up the flyer. It announced that an Indian guru, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami, would be lecturing on Bhagavad Gita at Sunset Point. I was so excited. Had the universe just sent me a message. I went to hear what the Swami had to say, and it was love at first sight. Oh, so we're going to get the whole story here. Oh, you're in for a treat. If she tells us, oh yeah, she's going to tell the whole story. This is like, oh my God, this is like, you're going to go crazy. You're going to fall in love with Prabhupada 100 times more after you hear this. After his talk, Prabhupada invited me to come visit him at the apartment where he was staying with Govinda Dasi, Gaur Sundar, and Kartikeya. When we sat together in his room, I knew I was in the presence of a great soul. And yet his charming, warm, and loving personality made me feel immediately comfortable. It was an open and honest exchange. And I felt like I could tell him anything. So we talked for a long time about many subjects. He showed me his newly published Bhagavad Gita and compared it to my Bhagavad Gita by looking up a few verses, then declaring with complete confidence, mine is better. When he showed me his first record album, I told him that I had listened to it many times. I would play it while taking LSD, which I explained that I used as a sacrament for self-realization. I told him that I saw Krishna on many of my psychedelic trips. Instead of being judgmental, Prabhupada was concerned for my welfare and said, it is not the LSD. You see Krishna because he loves you and shows favor upon you. Promise me you will not take this any longer. You see this relationship? It was like, oh, she's his disciple and they're meeting again and she doesn't know it and Prabhupada knows it. It's like he becomes like the guru. Okay, don't do this. Like, I'm your guru, I'm telling you, please promise you won't. Like, you meet someone and 10 minutes later they say, promise not to do this. Interesting, right? During my visit, Govinda Dasi brought in a tray of sugarcane for him. He offered to share the stalks and taught me how to chew on the cane, to suck out the sweet juice and discard the tough pulp. A definite lesson at the first meeting, a definite life lesson at the first meeting. When it came time for me to leave, Prabhupada said he wished I could stay with them, but apologized that there was no facility in the small apartment. I knew shortly after that meeting that he was the spiritual teacher I had been looking for. Although I didn't know there was a Hare Krishna movement, to me, he was an Indian Swami I met in Hawaii. When I called my friend Susan, who later became Palika, and spoke with her about him, she told me he had a temple in Los Angeles that a few of our friends had visited and she was considering moving in. Hare Krishna. Wish my friends would have moved in. A few months later, I flew to Los Angeles to join the temple. It was only a few weeks after my arrival that we met again. This time I was wearing a sari and tilak, but he immediately recognized me and said, "We met in Hawaii. I'm glad you've come." Affection, right? So much affection. In October 1970, I was asked to join a small group of devotees going to India with Srila Prabhupada. When we landed, I felt like I was home again. There are so many heavenly stories from those early days in India, and I was very blessed to be able to spend much time with Prabhupada. He called us the World Sankirtan Party. And at first, there were only 5 women: Jamuna, Malati, her younger daughter, Saraswati, Himavati, Madri, and me. He was very protective of us. She's going to talk about this. This is really nice. Shortly after we arrived in Bombay, Srila Prabhupada was invited to a spiritual gathering in Amritsar called the All India Vedanta Sammelan. Jamuna and I were the only women who went on that engagement, along with 8 men. When we arrived, we were given 2 rooms next to each other. Prabhupada stayed in one, and Jamuna and I stayed in the other. The men slept in the courtyard, and it was extremely cold. In other words, what she's saying is that there were 2 rooms, and there were 2 women. So Prabhupada took one room, he gave the other room to the women, and all the men slept outside. Unlike if the men were in charge, the men would have got the room and the women would have slept outside. Maybe. What do you say, Haryashra? Maybe? Good chance, right? 50-50. The men slept in the courtyard and it was extremely cold. Often Prabhupada asked Jamuna and me to lead kirtans or sing bhajans. I had never performed for such a large crowd and it was intimidating, but he encouraged us and we loved singing for him. Why did Prabhupada do that? Well, Prabhupada he liked to show off his Western disciples. So, here are these people with white skin doing kirtan, speaking. But if you want to up it, it's like Prabhupada was a slap in the face to the Indians. It's like, look, what are you doing? Look at them, Americans. You're trying to be like Americans and they're trying to be like you. Hello, are you here? What's going on here? That was a slap in the face. But in Indian culture, women were always in the background, right? They really didn't do much. Like when Prabhupada came to America, he saw women were driving cars. That was like, wow, your women drive cars. You can imagine they weren't even driving cars. Well, in those days, of course, the men didn't really drive cars, but you understand, they didn't do much. So then Prabhupada has his white Americans, and then he puts the women. All right, not only the white Americans are Vaishnavas, but women. So that was like a punch in the nose. The men were a slap in the face. That was a punch in the nose. Like, yeah. And even women are doing this. Of course, she's an amazing singer, her and Jamuna. So, that was a good choice of kirtan leaders. Of course, there were so many good kirtan leaders amongst the men. Prabhupada wanted the women. He wanted to kind of in your face, Once a man criticized us for our imperfect Sanskrit pronunciation. Prabhupada defended us saying, quote, Prabhupada's not defending the pronunciation. He's acknowledging that we don't pronounce well. But Prabhupada says, these girls have more devotion than you will ever know in a million lifetimes. The man slunk away, humiliated. Wow. Hare Krishna. When we visited the Golden Temple, the holiest site of the Sikh religion, Prabhupada was very respectful and impressed by the spiritual food of the temple. Food was being cooked and served to thousands of visitors of all faiths from their community kitchen. Thousands and thousands and thousands. It's 24/7. Do you know that? I got to go there. They have a kitchen and it's operating, and they have a kitchen and a prasadam hall, and it operates 24/7, as far as I know. They would make thousands of rotis every day. When we left, Prabhupada was asked to write in their guest book. Under comments, he wrote, very spiritual. Under religion, he wrote, Krishnite. Then looked up at us and laughed and repeated the word he made up, Krishnite. What are you? I'm a Krishnite. I'm a dynamite Krishnite. Okay. When we took the Punjab Mall train back to Bombay, Guru Das was in first class with Prabhupada, and Jamuna wanted to visit them, so we made our way to their cabin. Jamuna asked if there was anything Prabhupada wanted, and he said, "Can you cook me some hot rice?" We said yes, even though we had no idea how we could do it on a moving train. Okay, so well, could you imagine, like today, your guru is on a train, says, can you get me some hot rice? And there's, like, can you cook some hot rice? If you're ever in that situation, ladies and gentlemen, you'll know what to do by hearing this story. We wandered through the train until we found an employee and insisted that they let us cook. The answer from the official was a definitive no. Fearless Jamuna replied, then I may as well throw myself from the train. In other words, yeah, the story is condensed, but it was going back and forth. No way, you can't do this, it's not allowed. She actually walked by the door of the train. She said, if you don't let us do it, I'm going to jump out. He said, don't jump out, don't do it. Okay, okay. And then they brought her in. And then he brought him in and he said, "You're crazy American women." That's crazy American women, in case you didn't understand. So after cleaning the tiny, filthy kitchen nook and scrubbing out a dirty pot, we made the rice. Jamuna was such an expert cook that even in the worst conditions, she was able to make sublime rice. She carried the platter to Prabhupada's cabin, and he was delighted. Jamuna and I often wondered about this pastime. Did he really want rice, or was he teaching us a lesson in determination and commitment? I mean, the context of what she's doing is to show how Prabhupada interacted with women a lot. He gave them service, and he didn't diminish them in any way or give them a second-class position. That's what she's showing by these leelas. When we returned to Bombay, we moved into a Sitaram temple. Every day, Prabhupada would have visitors come to speak with him, and he would sit with him, excuse me, we would sit with him and listen, prepared to serve if there was something he wanted us to do. Although many of these conversations were in Hindi, so we couldn't understand what was being said, there is one visit I will always remember, because for me, it was a lesson in taking personal responsibility. An Indian gentleman walked into his room and prostrated himself in front of Srila Prabhupada. He said, "Shamaji, you will save me." And Prabhupada replied, "I cannot save you. I can teach you how to save yourself, but you must do the work." Very important. I'm going to read that again, just in case you were spacing out. An Indian gentleman walked into the room and prostrated himself in front of Srila Prabhupada. He said, "Swamiji, you will save me." And Prabhupada replied, "I cannot save you. I can teach you how to save yourself, but you must do the work." Everyone write that down. I can teach you how to save yourself. It's a good subtitle for this class. On one of our village engagements after his lecture, Prabhupada motioned for me to come to him. As I approached him, he said, "Kaushalya, sing Isopanishad." At first, I was very nervous. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam. As I sang the verses, I watched Prabhupada and became more confident. He was beaming with pride, and his smile was as effulgent as the sun. Okay, everyone, listen to this. Don't space out. When I finished, he called me to him. And as I started to pay my obeisances, he pulled me closer and patted me on the head. It was a really special moment I will never forget. Why did Prabhupada do that? He did this also to Madhavisa after a Rath Yatra. He was so happy. He pulled Madhavisa, put his head on his lap, and he did the same thing with Kaushalya. When Prabhupada was so pleased because here is this young woman, like 19 years old or 18 years old, chanting Isa Upanishads. She's got an amazing voice in front of all these Indians who are like, I don't believe this. It's not really happening, pinching themselves, to see if this is actually happening. And Prabhupada, it's like, look I went to America, they're Vaishnavas. Hello, they're Vaishnavas. Can you see that? That made Prabhupada so happy that he could show this process is for everyone, isn't it? Because they didn't believe that. They thought it was just for the Indians. So he was so happy. And when you please Prabhupada, sometimes he would be so pleased. He just want to show his affection, rub your head. Prabhupada touched my head, not because I did anything, because I was in a line where he was touching everybody's head. So that was in the early days of the movement, these devotees just kind of spontaneously created kind of these traditions. So Prabhupada would leave the temple and there would be a row. We would be on either side and we would all be on our knees, and then Prabhupada would walk through and then he would come touch our head and we would bow down, try to touch his feet. So I got that. That was when I was initiated. That was a bonus. I was living in Bombay at our apartment in the Kash Ganga when two sets of deities arrived from Jaipur. Prabhupada wanted one set sent to Calcutta ahead of the Pandal program. So I was tasked to travel with them on the train to Calcutta. It was the first time I was in a first-class cabin on the train, and it was very opulent. As I slept that night, I dreamt I was playing a white mridanga, which I had never seen. But when I arrived in Calcutta, that's what we had. Just before the start of the Calcutta Pandal, Prabhupada said, in India, usually women shouldn't play mridanga. He glanced at me and could tell how disappointed I was. Then with a smile, he said, but Kaushalya can play because she would become too upset. Once again, he was teaching with kindness and showing how progressive his thinking was for the time. So she's showing that Prabhupada was very sensitive to the desires of the devotees and their needs. And he could tell. This is the sign of a sensitive person is you just look at another person's face and you know what they're feeling. Isn't it? You just look at their face. You go, are you okay? She's not going to like this. Prabhupada could see. Prabhupada had told me that marble plates were better than gold. So, as a surprise, I had a set with a platter and little bowls made for him from white marble. When he arrived back to Calcutta after one of his travels, I brought him a plate of fruit, and he said, oh, this is very nice, but these are white marble. My heart sank. I thought, oh no, I got it wrong. Then he smiled and said, when I was a boy, my father would use black marble, but I have so many white fathers now, so this is perfect. Hare Krishna. There's one more memory I'd like to share. As we traveled through India, I remember that once Tamal Krishna asked Prabhupada where he wanted to go next. Prabhupada said, I am just like a cow. I give milk wherever you take me. So my dear Srila Prabhupada, I wanted to thank you for all the cream you've bestowed upon us. Your words and deeds will empower our lives and speak to our hearts forever. So this story is important on many levels, but One way it's important, at least I believe, one way it's important is it shows a side of Prabhupada that maybe many devotees don't know, but we should emulate this. These are examples from a pure devotee of how he interacts with other people, with sensitivity, with affection, with encouragement. And Prabhupada traveled a lot, and he said, I'm traveling to encourage my disciples. So it was one of Prabhupada's main services to us was to encourage us. And the way he encouraged us a lot was by accepting us as we are, as we were, and appreciating us for little things and showing, and sometimes thanking us for doing it, showing appreciation, and as we saw here, even showing affection and also being sensitive to our own limitations and our own needs and desires. And so seeing this, how I personally take it is that this is an example for us to follow in our dealings. And another thing we see here, but she didn't mention everything, but another thing you see here is Prabhupada never had this air that I am the Acharya of the Hare Krishna movement. And you could see from that personal exchange. And I always feel it's such a comment if you meet someone who's in a very high position and you don't know they're in a high position and you can't tell by their persona, like because their persona is not like, okay, get out of my room, I'm important. Because we've met people like that, isn't it? Okay, Harisha, out, you feel like I'm important and you're not. So, and Prabhupada was never like that. You didn't feel that, isn't it? The most important person in the universe, doing the most important work in the universe, and never made you feel like that. He always was appreciating what you were doing and telling you things like, yeah, I can't do this alone. We have to do this together. So these are really important examples, because if we don't emulate this, then it's not really Prabhupada's Hare Krishna movement. It'll be the Hare Krishna movement, but not Prabhupada's. It'll be the ego's Hare Krishna movement. It'll be a different movement. And so it's such an important lesson, because the average conditioned soul, when they get a position, it makes them think that they're special. And humility dictates that we think others are special. And so we saw that with Prabhupada. So, it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's an unfortunate reality that we saw that with Prabhupada, but for many years, we didn't see it, although we saw it. I don't know if you had that experience. Like you see it, but because we're so puffed up, we didn't see it. We don't imbibe it. It's like we saw it, but we didn't. It just didn't register, And I had a realization once. But there was some conflict amongst devotees, and I had met a Gaudiya Vaishnava who was very, very humble. And I was thinking, he was an older man. I was thinking, we're all young and we don't see this kind of humility that naturally evolves as you advance in Krishna consciousness and as you get older. And I was thinking, why didn't Prabhupada talk more about humility? That this is like so important. If we don't have this, we could self-destruct. Why didn't he talk more about humility? So I was curious. So I went on the folio, put in humility, like thinking, like Prabhupada should have talked about it more. Like thousands and thousands came up. And it was a stark realization that it had just gone over me, because I actually wasn't interested in it. It was like it wasn't on my agenda at that point. That on my agenda was kind of like, I need to be accepted as an advanced devotee and respected and so on and so forth. So then when I read about humility, the thousands of times, it was like I didn't read about it because I thought Prabhupada should have talked about it more. Kind of embarrassing. And you can reflect on that in your own life. Are there things that Prabhupada has talked about that you think he's not talking about or not talking about much because you weren't ready for it? And so it just went, shoop. I didn't notice it. Humility is important. Well, it wasn't that important for me at that time, think more being in the center was more important, so I didn't have really a need for anything about humility. Forget that. Who needs that? And so you have these examples of Prabhupada acting this way time and time again. And then you have examples of Prabhupada being heavy, right? And so those who don't want to be humble will remember the heavy examples, isn't it? Why are you so heavy? Because Prabhupada was heavy also. Yeah, but what about the other examples? What other examples? It's like you'll actually think he was only heavy. It's possible, right? So I think this offering is very important for us because it shows a side that we really need to emulate. Not that we can't be heavy when needed, but if that's all you are is heavy, that's not going to work. Prabhupada was heavy, but that was the exception. The rule was he was appreciating and kind and funny. So we're going to see if there are any questions. I was going to read my offering and explain it, but I think I may need more time to do that. Jyotirmai says, at the Golden Temple, they have the biggest kitchen in the world. You know what, Jyotirmai? I started with the last one. I went in that kitchen and I saw their, 6 feet wide pots. I said, can I have a spoon? And I took a picture of me like I was cooking in there 6 foot. But that was fun. It was kind of like, no, you know how big the spoon was? As big as like the size of a, oar on a, call it an oar, paddle on a rowboat. It's about that size, like 6 feet, And they're all in ecstasy, all the cooks, and you just walk in and it's just like, it's nonstop, I think we walked in like 10 at night and it was, people still coming. Temple had been closed. So, okay. So, trying. Leftover questions from last Wednesday. I think we answered that. How do we keep our sadhana strong? I think we answered that. Can women become initiating gurus yet? I know this was being worked on. Just curious on the status. Humble obeisances. It's being discussed for the last 19 years. See, you women, you create so many problems. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have wasted 19 years talking about this stuff. Like, I just can't believe, like, you women have so much Shakti. It's amazing. How could you do this to us? I'm not going to let any women control me. You ever hear a man say that? I'm not going to let women control me. And I just laugh. I go, you're completely controlled by women. Right now you're controlled by women because you're talking about how you don't want to be controlled by women. And if you weren't controlled by women, you wouldn't be talking about this. Hare Krishna. So funny, isn't it? You guys are controlling everything. And the Hare Krishna movement is trying to make sure you don't. You got men under control. There's like a million songs about that, right? Chains, my baby's got me locked up in chains. You know that song. You must know that. I won't sing. I'll spare you the mercy. I won't sing the song, but what group sang that song? Oh, you know that song? Your life is wasted. Chains, my baby's got me locked up in chains. Yeah. What happens with devotees? I just broke my vow not to sing that song. What happens with devotees that go 2 years and return to their hometowns in Indian mode and try to force the devotees that arrive to the temple to act like them? What happens to devotees like that? They grow up and 20 years later, they'll tell you what fanatics they were when they were young. Or they move to India, where they can be Indians. Some devotees are just Indians that just happen to take birth in America and they don't fit. So when they go to India, it's like, oh my God, and they come back with everything Indian possible. They just love it, and they're speaking English with an Indian accent and wiggling their head this way. And like, it's kind of like transgender, like you're a man in a woman's body. It's like you're an American and you're an Indian in an American body. It's like, you got to just go back to India, then you're fine, right? But it's not that all Indian things aren't good. That some of them come back and they come back to America and they go like, hey, we got all these like militia habits we got to get rid of. So it's not just one-sided. There's a lot to be said about doing things in Indian mode, because there's a lot of things should be done in Indian mode. Eat with your right hand, wash yourself before you eat, wash after you eat, respect your elders, respect your teachers, etc., etc. So, but it may go to the extreme, yeah. But if you chant Bengali and the accent, that's good, right? Nothing is bad until you force other people to be like you. Then it's a problem. So you can be as Indian as you want. That's your personal choice. We'll go to your house and you're walking around in a gumsha, whatever. Okay, cool. But to say everyone's got to walk around their house with a gumsha, or you're going to a hellish planet, that doesn't work. Okay. Krishna Karshani says, if we want Krishna to help us to overcome certain anartha, we should ask him to do it, or just make endeavors to overcome this anartha. With hope, Krishna will help us. Personally, I think one without the other, I think that has a synergistic effect. One without the other is, as who said it? The Christian monk, pray like everything depends on God and act like everything depends on you. I think that's the perfect combination, because, you're laying in bed and Krishna, get me out of bed. There's a joke. Oh God, goes to church. Oh God, help me win the lottery. And then here's a voice from God. Buy a lottery ticket, so it's like that, Oh God, help me help me wake up in the morning. Open your eyes when the alarm goes off, try to sit up, so you can't just like put it all on him. Now, if in some cases you're trying to do something, let's say you go on Sankirtan and you're like the most introverted person God ever created, you just to talk to people, you'll have a nervous breakdown. So you can't even get yourself to approach somebody because you feel like, if I approach them, they're going to say no. And if they say no, my whole life is ruined. So at that point, there's nothing you can do but pray to Krishna, make me fearless, help me, Krishna, do something, and so, so somebody, you're just praying like that, and some guy accidentally bumps into you and forces you into another person, and you're falling over, and you have books in your hand, and you give the person a book. Krishna could do something like that, and the person would go, Bhagavad Gita, I've been looking for this book for the last 100 lifetimes, so Krishna could do that, So, that's in the point where it's like, I can't do this, like they made me a temple president. I was 19, like, okay, like, how does this work? Krishna, I don't know what to do, So, of course, you go through the motions, you try your best, but sometimes you're in situations where like I never did this before. I've never done this before. I don't know how to do this, Krishna, I can't even do it. But in general, I always feel like, hey, how can you pray for this if you're not trying? It's not fair, isn't it? What do you think? I think that's how I think. I think it's not fair to pray if you don't try. Krishna, I'm so lazy. Can you just like have an earthquake at 4 a.m. so bed topples over and I get up? It doesn't work like that. God helps those who help themselves. I cannot save you, only you can save yourself. We read it this morning, right? Hare Krishna. Okay. Wow, Krishna Karshini became a devotee when she was 15. That means in your last life, you had some business to finish up. Just taking off where you left off. The biggest kitchen in the world. How about left-handed people? To me, learn to chant with the right hand took me 1 year. And still sometimes I still take my japa. That's because you're a malecha, Jyotirmaya. Left-handed malecha. Oh my God. Yeah. And Greeks are malechas, right? Isn't that where the word came from? Yeah. She's through and through, top to bottom. Yeah. Left-hand japa. Oh my God. I was living in Mayapur and then I came back to LA. I was living in Vrindavan. And I came from Los Angeles and I went back there and we arrived in LA. It was like total culture shock. We weren't used to it. There's a devotee on a japa walk, walking his dog, like things you would never see in India. It's just like, so. I have a story for you, Jyotirmaya. This will shake the left hand out of your samskars forever. So we're on the streets of Calcutta, 1975. I'm with my godbrother. It is as hot can be and as human can be. So we go somewhere and we get a limca. That's like the 7-Up of India. Bona fide, because Prabhupada drank it. So anyway, so this godbrother's left-handed, right? So we're just on the street and he's drinking his limca with his left hand, like, whatever. That's all he's done that all his life. And like 3 seconds later, some guy's like, left hand, no. He makes him shift it to the right hand. Just some guy on the street, like, you can't drink with your left hand. That's like, that's sacrilegious, because we know what the left hand's for, so it's inauspicious. Yeah. So that's the culture. And when the devotees first went to India, some of them were eating with their left hand. And if the Indians see us eating with the left hand, we get the rubber stamp, malecha. These are not Vaishnavas, they're malechas. They're eating with their left hand. So to us, it's like, what's the thing? I'm left-handed, eat with your left hand. But for Indians, that's like inauspicious. That's not, that hand is dirty, contaminated. You don't do it. And so Prabhupada would say, don't eat with your left hand. But sometimes devotees were habituated to eat with their left hand. And in Europe, they have like a fork in their left hand or something, or a knife in their right hand, a fork in the, even the devotees, they're eating like that. I'm like, what are you doing? It's just the culture. So Prabhupada said, okay, sit on your left hand. That way you won't eat with it. Because it was such an embarrassment, to have disciples eating with their left hand in public. It's just like, you don't do that. So he made them sit on their left hand. So I hope that knocks the left hand out of you, Jyotirmaya. No, we need more stories. Okay, how about all your clothes have zipper pockets and you stick your left hand in the pocket and you snap it up and it just stays there. You can't get it out. You need a third party to get it out. How about that? Would that help? Anyway, this is serious. There's a planet for people who chant with their left hand. Did you know that? Right there in the 5th canto. I have this dream, when we do our japa retreats, we have a problem at the end of the retreat. Because we spend like 5 days, learning how to chant properly. So, the last day or the day before last, we do 64 rounds. So you've had like days and days to prepare for that. So you chant some pretty good rounds, like usually like the best or better rounds than you've ever chanted. So everybody's sitting, Hare Krishna, Krishna, chanting really quietly, and, just sitting still for like hours. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then you come back, you've done that with like 100 other devotees and everybody's doing it. And then you come back to the temple. Like, and you're like, I hate you. You can't, and then I think there's a planet where everybody's chanting like that. And if you chant like that, you go to that planet and they drive you crazy. You have to spend eternity watching people chant japa like that. So be careful, Jyotirmaya. You might go to the planet of left-handed joppers, japa chanters. You think there's a planet like that? Shnik Loka? Yeah, and the Shnikadutas come and take you there. Where are we going? We're going to Shnikaloka. Why? What did I do? You chanted Shnik Shnik Mom Mom. And you have to listen to people chant like that for eternity. Wow, what a curse. Okay. How Prabhupada used to deal with devotees who fall or went away from the movement and then come back. Oh, what a great question. As if they never left. I mean, if the person had been a child abuser or something, that's different. But we're just talking about normal fall downs, bona fide common ways of breaking regulative principles that normal human beings do. Sometimes when sannyasis would fall down, they'd come back and he'd say, okay, take up your position. They were shocked. You were the president here. Okay, come back and be president. It was like Prabhupada's mood was like whatever happened is over. So let's just take up where we left off when you were doing well and just go from there. Which means and teaches us that you can do no matter what happens or how you've messed up. You can always take off from your highest point and go from there. It's such an encouraging thought. In fact, I was actually thinking that this morning when I was chanting japa. I don't know why I was thinking, but I was thinking it doesn't matter what happened in the past, because right now I'm chanting japa. And however good or bad my japa is what's happening right now. And what happened in the past is like, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Because today is the first day of the rest of my life. And this round right now is the first round of the rest of my rounds of my life. So it's like, whatever you're doing now is what you're doing now. And what you did then is like, whatever, it's over, isn't it? So that was Prabhupada's mood. It's like, if you're chanting good rounds now, you're chanting good rounds now. If you're surrendered now, you're surrendered now. Whatever happened in the past is whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as you're sincere now, that's what matters, right? That's a really good question, an important question. And we have many examples of so many devotees have told me stories where they felt like they failed Prabhupada. Not always grossly, but just, in some way, didn't live up to expectations that Prabhupada had for them. And they felt really bad. And Prabhupada never made them feel bad, ever, 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 never, ever. So, the thing, if a devotee was sincere in trying to serve, then to their best of capacity, Prabhupada appreciated it. If you argued with Prabhupada, then you're in trouble. No, Prabhupada, I'm not going to do that. This is bad. I don't believe this. All right, then that could be big trouble. But if you're trying, it's like, okay, whatever happened, it's over. Prabhupada was like the ultimate forgiver. It was like they say, forgiveness is inherent in bhakti. So forgiveness was inherent in Prabhupada's nature. It's almost like he couldn't not be forgiving. It's like a pure devotee cannot not be forgiving. It's a contradiction, right? Now, I told this story before. I'm going to remind you of this story. So there's a devotee who had taken sannyas from Prabhupada. He'd been in India with Prabhupada. And then he had fallen away. I think he was even eating meat. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was eating meat. Breaking the regulative principles, at least 3. I only followed 3 principles, Prabhu. What 3? No meat, no fish, no eggs. Well, he wasn't even following those 3. He was eating meat. But he would come to the Soho Street restaurant, and one devotee, who was an old friend of his, she would just talk to him when he would come and encourage him. So one day, so he's taking drugs, eating meat, whatever else he's doing. You can just imagine. He's in the restaurant and Prabhupada shows up at Soho Street. And the devotee says, let's go meet Prabhupada. He's like, no, come. All right. Prabhupada gets out of the car, looks around, sees him, goes right up to him and says, Rishi Kumar, so you'll cook for me? Like Prabhupada knows everything. But Prabhupada, Rishi Kumar is not following the principles. So Rishi Kumar, you'll cook for me? Now, what could be more merciful than that? Someone who's eating meat, having illicit sex, and taking LSD, who's your old servant? Then you say, okay, come and cook for me. Why? Because if you do that, it will save you. That's what Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was willing to do that to save this person. Hare Krishna. Now, there are stories on the opposite side of the coin. Prabhupada had another sannyasi, also at the same time went to India. And he came back and met Prabhupada. I think he was very high and a little bit. And he didn't come back to hear from Prabhupada. He was like, Prabhupada, I'm doing this and that. And anyway, Prabhupada could see he was belligerent. And he was becoming more and more belligerent and arguing with Prabhupada. And at one point, Prabhupada said, get out! He screamed at him. And there are other stories like that. Another story where devotees were arguing with Prabhupada. Prabhupada was saying, do this, follow GBC. No, we don't want to follow GBC. They make mistakes. We just want to follow you. Okay, you want to follow me? So I'm telling you to follow the GBC. No, we just want to follow you. This is going in this argument. They do this and they do that. And then they had hair. And Prabhupada said, if you have hair, you're not my disciple. So then they said, but Prabhupada, when you were a householder, you had a mustache. And that was like, salt on the wound. Prabhupada said, go do whatever you want, which was a rejection. It was the only time I'm aware that that devotees were rejected. It says, go. And the Guru says, do whatever you want. In this context, it means contract is broken. I can't help you. Just so, I don't want to argue with you. So that's there also. So Prabhupada is unlimitedly merciful, no matter what you do, as long as you're sincere and you're trying to follow, right? But if you're not, then you're in trouble. Hare Krishna. Good question. I have so many stories from devotees where Prabhupada just accepted it. Srujan has a new use for the left hand. In India, left hand is used for using mobile while japa in right hand. Yes. Hare Krishna. So there is a good use for the left hand. That's it, Jyotirmai. Put your mobile in your left hand. And you'll have to have japa in your right hand. Right? As long as it's off, as long as it has the Hare Krishna mantra is turned off, fine. Maybe we should make an app, the affirmations app. You just put it on and every 5 minutes you get a new affirmation. We'll do that just for you, Jyotirmai. We'll save you from your left hand. How can we save Jyotirmai from her left hand? This is like a conundrum. Hare Krishna. Okay. So it looks like the party's over. And I don't have time to read my offering, but Wednesday I won't be here because I'll be flying back at the time of class. I'll probably be on an airplane at 6 a.m. I could be in Dallas. I could be in the Dallas airport at that time. Anyway, it's possible. Well, if I'm free at 7:30 in the Dallas airport, I'll log on. So it'll be a surprise. You can check me out if you want. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Any other questions? When am I planning to come to India? I'm coming on the 1st. Those of you who were in class the other day understand the 1st. That was the Chinese class. The 1st. Coming on the 1st. And Shujan's going, what? The 1st of November? No, first chance I get. That kind of, I don't have to think about any other answer. Yeah. When I'm coming to India. Krishna will reveal when the time is right to come. It just happens like that. When the right time to come arrives, it'll be the right time and we'll know. And the stars will conspire and we'll be on the plane. It just happened like that. Okay. Oh, and the last question, how to get devotees to come back who have left? Be their friends. Don't judge them. Don't criticize them. Give them lots of prasadam. Anuradha, we just heard from Chitsugananda that Prabhupada said the only instruction that Chitsugananda gave for preaching in Mexico was to make sure they get a lot of prasadam. The only instruction he didn't say do kirtan, he didn't say do festival, he said just make sure they get a lot of prasadam. So pass that message around. I think that's super important. Whatever we do, they should get lots of prasadam. So you bring people back with lots of prasadam, lots of love, affection, friendship, let them talk, open their heart, share their frustrations. And if they're willing, give them some seva. You also have to know why they left. Sometimes it's not weakness, it's just alienation. They didn't feel wanted or needed or listened to or loved. We talked about this, but I talked about this with some other devotee. He said he felt like we should actually have an official organization and movement to connect more with Prabhupada disciples, but a lot of them they're bitter. That's the problem. The movement changed a lot, and they become very bitter. So, but friendship has always helped. How to be their friend if they tend to criticize? It's difficult. You may not be able to with all of them. Sometimes you let them criticize, just listen, and then let them vent. And if they vented and that's helped them, then that's good. But if it's continuous, then it's not good for them and not good for you. Okay, so we're going to do japa in a few minutes. We have a japa thing. I'll just start it and then we should have prasadam. God loves us. There'll be prasadam there.